Hi everyone. So today I'm going to show you how to make this adorable love-themed Captain of My Heart card with Copic markers and some products by MFT Stamps. Particularly, we are going to be using the Party Like a Pirate and Mermazing stamp sets to create the scene for this Captain of My Heart scene. So let's get started, and we're going to start by stamping our images on, and our mermaid is going to be stamped first because she is kind of in front of our scene, and then our little pirate is behind her, so I'm stamping him second. And then I'm using some masking paper by MFT Stamps, which I find works really well with Copic markers. The cardstock that I'm using is Express It Blend It card, which is my favorite cardstock for Copic coloring. It just blends the colors really beautifully, and it can take a lot of ink. And I cut that out to an A2 size card panel, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then I just taped the card panel down to my cardboard board using some blue painter's tape with about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch border on the sides. So let's get started with our background. We're going to start by drawing in our line between the sand and the sea, and then we're going to stamp in a little palm tree in the background, and I'm just putting a little piece of scratch paper behind part of the stamp because I only wanted it to stamp partially. And now we can add in our line, our horizon line that's going to separate the sea from the sky. Now it's time to color. So we're going to start by coloring in the water that's closest to our mermaid and pirate, and we're going to use BG10 right at the shoreline, and then some B00 at the midpoint of the ocean. And then we're going to use some B000 just to blend all of that together, and then go over it with some BG10. Now for the dark water off in the distance, I'm using B37 right at the horizon line, and I'm trying to be careful but not too careful to make sure that my line stays straight, because our horizon is always a very straight, stark line between the sea and the sky. And then I'm going to blend my blues together with B34 and then B21, and then I will get out my B00 once more just to make sure everything is blended together nicely. Now we can start working on the sand, and for the sand I'm going to use E30 towards the middle of the scene, like right where the little pirate and mermaid are. And then we're going to get darker towards the front of the scene or the bottom of the card with some E31. And this is just our base layer. We're going to do a lot of coloring over that later, so don't worry, we will move back to it. Now we're going to start on our clouds. And the best advice I can give you for clouds is just draw a really simple shape like a first grader for your clouds. And it may look kind of juvenile at first, but as you add in the shading, it's going to be fine. And the shading is really just a series of scribbles along the edges, and then towards the middle of the cloud, wherever you think that those little kind of cloud shapes should be, so to speak. And it's all going to dry back really nicely into the background. So don't worry if it doesn't look exactly perfect right now. By the time it dries back and then we add some colorless blender, it's going to look great. You just really want some little puffy images and some little scribbles on the inside, and then I promise you they'll look like clouds. And then we're going to add a little bit of sky in with B000. And I'm just going to be careful to go around the edges of the clouds, and then that's going to dry back also. And I'm also going to blend everything together with my colorless blender. And we're done. So this is a really light, faint sky. I'm still working on my clouds, and I think as I get more used to them and more practiced, I'll be able to have a darker sky set against my clouds, and I'll have darker clouds as well. But for now, I'm happy with this really light, faint kind of hint of clouds in the background. Okay, let's move on to coloring the skin on our little mermaid and pirate. And I'm going to use E00 for the base, and then E13 for our shadow areas. And I'm just going to put some shadows along her waistline, and then underneath her hair, the same thing for the little boy pirate. and then underneath his arm there, and on his hand and by his neck. And then I'm going to blend the E13 into the E00 with some E11, leaving like the center of their faces light because I'm gonna just add another coat of E00 there, and I want that to be the lightest part of their faces. I also gave some rosy cheeks to the mermaid with R20. And now let's work on the mermaid's hair. So we're gonna give her like a reddish, brownish auburn hair, and we're gonna use E08 for our lightest shade. And I'm just kind of flicking from the base of her scalp towards the center of her scalp, and then from the base of her ear towards the top. You want to leave a little highlight area in the center. And then the other colors I'm going to use to round out her hair are E29 for our darkest shade, E19 for our mid-tone. And looks like I'm about done there. For her bikini top, we're going to use RV52 and 55, which I think make a really, really nice pink. We're going to give her a little yellow star in her hair with Y11 and I think that was Y15 or Y18. For her tail, we're going to use BG 90, 93, and 96. And I'm going to add the shading like underneath her little crease in her, I guess it would be behind her knees if she had legs, and then by her waist, and then the edges of the tail. And then I'll go over that with BG 93 and then 90. And then to give a nice glow in the center, we'll use some YG 11. And I'm just going to work on adding some little speckles to her tail with YG 99, just to give her some texture so she looks like she's a real fish, or at least a real half fish. And then I'm going to put some more shading on her bikini top with RV19. Now we're going to color in the little rock that she is sitting on, and we're going to use E41 for the base. And then for the shadow areas, we're going to use E47. And I'm just following the little markings that are on the stamp itself to add the shadow areas and the little crevices in the rock. And then I'm going to blend that with some E44, trying to leave the center fairly light. And I'm going to blend out a little further with E43, and then go over everything with E41. And if the shadows lightened up, I just went back with my E44. Now for our little turtle, we are going to use YG91 for the base of his face and flippers, and then YG95. For his shell, we're going to use some different green shades. We're going to use G43 and 46 for some parts of his shell, and then G21 and G24, and then also G46 for some other areas, and then YG17 and YG67 for the rim of his shell, just so that we have some differentiation so he doesn't just look like one boring green color. So there's like lots of different kinds of greens going on. For a little palm tree in the back, we're going to use YG01, YG17, and YG67 for the palm fronds. And those are my favorite colors for palm trees. And then for the base of the tree, we'll use E44, 47, and 49. We'll also use those colors for the coconuts. For the shell, we're going to use some R20, 43, and then R30. And then for our money, the little coins that are spilling out of the treasure chest, we'll use I think that was Y13 and Y35. And now we can work on our little pirate, and we'll give him some brown hair. We'll make him a brunette with some E40s. And then for his little pirate hat and his vest and his pants, we're going to make those black. And to do so, we'll use C3, C5, and C7. Some cool gray tones there. It's my favorite way to make black. And I'm just going to focus the shading around the edges of the hat, and then also where there's a little dip kind of drawn in on the stamp itself, right above the eye patch. So I added a little darker shading there too to match. And then we're just going to keep working on his pants, making them black, keeping the lightest colors towards the center but making sure to give some definition to the sides of his leg so that we can see that he is wearing pants and not a skirt. And then that is getting close to being done for me. I'm just going to keep working and blending everything together. And then we can work on his vest with the same color scheme. And then I just darkened up his eye patch a little bit with a Copic 100. And then we'll give him a little red and white striped shirt, which I thought was just perfect for a little pirate boy, using R24 and R29. And then we'll give him a yellow band around his belt with Y18 and Y35. And then for his boots, I'm using E44, 47, and 49. Just putting a little shading on the white stripes there with a C3. And then for his sword, we're going to use some toner grays. The toner grays are my favorite gray to make metal. And we'll use T2, T4, and T6 here. And then for the handle, we'll get back out our E44 and E47, and maybe a little bit of E49 to make the handle on the sword. And then for our parrot, we're going to give him a red head. And one of my favorite things to do when I am shading in red is to add a coat of YR12 underneath my reds. I feel like it gives the red a nice glow when you do that. And then I just added some R24 and R29 to the rest of our parrot's head. And then we're going to make him nice and bright with some blues and oranges and yellows for the rest of his body. And now we can move on to our last item that we're going to color in, and that's the treasure chest. And we're going to give it a nice blue violet trim with some BV04, BV02, and BV00. And then I made the bolts black. And then for the chest itself, we're going to use E23, E25, and E27, which I think was a nice, really bright and bold brown to make the treasure chest stand out, because we do have a lot of brown tones in the scene. So I wanted to make sure that our treasure chest was differentiated a little bit. So I added some little wood markings with my E47 and E49, and maybe some E29 too. Now we're going to just work on adding some shadows to the forefront of the scene. We're going to take some E34 and just kind of focus it around the edges of the scene, just kind of dappling it in there. And then we'll blend it in with the E31 like I'm doing here. I want to leave a little bit of a light around our two main characters just to make it look like they're glowing, like they're so happy and in love. There's just this glow emanating from them. So that's why I left the center of the scene really, really light. And then we'll put some little sandy shadows around our images in the scene. And I'm just gonna kind of dot some color on with an E35 in all the areas where we would expect there to be shadows. So it looks like it's a combination of shadows, but then also little pieces of sand resting around our little objects. I'm gonna darken things up a little bit with E37, just dotting that on, but very, very lightly. And then I'm gonna blend everything together with some little E31 dots. And now you'll see, now it's really starting to look like a sandy beach, right? And then I'm just gonna add some little stray dots here and there with my E31, just to reinforce that there's lots of sand on this beach. All right, so our scene is done, and now we can add our finishing touches and our sentiment. So I'm gonna peel off the painter's tape, stick the scene into my MISTI, and then I have this "You're the Captain of My Heart" stamp from MFT Stamps. This is part of the Party Like a Pirate stamp set. I stamped it with black VersaFine ink, and I just love how that looks. Now I went over their eyes with some black glaze pen, and then I'm gonna add very, very light highlights with a white gel pen, not as many as I usually do. I thought the scene was really, really cute as it was, and I didn't want to kind of detract from the scene by adding too many highlights. So I'm just adding a few here and there, some on the money, some on the shell, and some on the star in her hair. So that's it. So that is our scene for today, our little "You're the Captain of My Heart" card. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, everyone. I hope you give this card a try. I had so much fun making it, and I know you will too. And whoever you decide to give this card will absolutely love it. Have a great weekend or a great week, depending on when you're tuning in, and I will see you again in the next video.